Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mom Curious podcast, or welcome to the Mom Curious podcast if you've never been here before. Hi, I'm Daniella Rabbani. I'm your host. And I will say that this season is dedicated to the memory of my amazing sister, Ariana Rabbani Rappaporte. And if you can do an act of kindness in her honor, she really was the kindest, most amazing mommy, human sister. And in her absence, if you could make the world a little bit more beautiful, that would mean quite a lot to me. I am here with one of my very favorite people, Dr. Tanya Cotler. Thank you so much for taking the time. Here's a spoiler alert, my friends. We actually already recorded this interview, but the world is moving so quickly. And Tanya, the last time we spoke, it was during the LA fires, and you were offering your amazing advice. And by the time I went to post this, the world had gone on fire in a million other ways. And so I thought, if I could steal you for another little bit, I would. And so here we are again. How are you, Tanya?
And it is my honor to be here again, especially in this beautiful way to honor your beloved sister's memory.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I'm wondering if you might introduce yourself to our audience. And as you know, I'm always really curious about you as a person. I know that you have this incredible working with both children and mothers, but that's just my little nudge for your introduction, if I may. Who are you today?
It's funny because, as you said, that disclosure is helpful for both of us. We've done this before. So we had like a trial run. I never have trial runs. A fun fact is I actually never listen to a recording ever after I record. You never know what I sound like on a podcast. But ours I did listen to for a few minutes, and then I gave up because I don't like listening to myself. But
I feel the same.
right. But in the original, one thing I said that I am going to repeat, and nobody knows I'm repeating it, but you do, so I have to own it, is that I was here as your friend. And I wanted us to kind of set that tone again. I love what you've created here. I love that this isn't a podcast where you're bringing in expert upon expert upon expert in a saturated world of expertise and sometimes the death of expertise. And so I'm coming here as your friend who happens to also be a psychologist who specializes in motherhood and in child development, and primarily the intersection of those two. So the attachment relationship between the parent and child is kind of the way I like to explain why both when people ask. Who am I as person today? I had a chia seed.
Isn't that like the hardest question? I really like to like just like no softball here. Who are you today?
I'm telling you, today I'm a person who had my first chia seed pudding. And so today I'm a person who's rediscovered new things. And the research of new things is that it continues to make new dopamine pathways. So have a chia seed pudding if you never have. It enlightened me. That is who I am today.
Wait, now I have to understand. If we do new things, we get dopamine?
It's really good for us to kind of never think about how it's so helpful to just go for a walk somewhere you never walked, or try this new workout class, or I don't know, learn how to do pottery. The reason why those things work is that our brain likes novelty. Now, there's probably a whole bunch of listeners who are like, I really don't like novelty. Like, I watch the same TV show over and over again, or I watch the same movie over and over again. That's actually also what we do to take care of ourselves. If our nervous system is dysregulated or in burnout, we will actually go towards what's familiar because we don't have space for something new, and we're protecting ourselves to not get overwhelmed. So there are times where novelty is not helpful. But if we're feeling relatively steady, bored, burnt out, but not from a place of overwhelm in what our world is right now in some ways, cyclic new things all the time, it can be really helpful to try a pleasurable new activity or a chia seed pudding.
I love that so much. I actually don't like chia seed pudding so much, but it is really good for you. So, how did you get into your line of work? Working with mothers and children, which I find oddly rare.
It is.
I've never heard of anyone both working with children and adults.
It is very rare.
It is very rare and sort of bizarrely so. Like, it does make so much sense.
It is very rare.
How are you the only one who made sense of it in action?
It continues to plague me. I'll answer you how I got here, but I'll answer first it's not weird that it seems weird. Like, it continues to plague me. Why or how are we siloing the treatment of mothers and the treatment of children as a therapist? How are we siloing that we have a child mental health crisis and a maternal mental health crisis, but no one's going, that's strange. Like, how are we continuing to keep these two separate? And the answer of why I think we are meeting them both is actually that we are separating them, because they're inextricably linked. Actually, to help the child mental health crisis, we have to be helping the parents. And in order to help the parent, we actually have to be helping the offspring, because we grow in relationships. There's mutual impact. A child is an active participant in the relationship. Sometimes a child could be the corrective experience for the parent, the first time they've ever felt, not because you're telling them all your troubles, but just the first time the parent ever felt safe and seen and loved in a relationship that is in and of its own healing for the parent. And yet the parent needs to know how to receive that. And so they may need support depending on their life. And at the same time, if the parent can provide that for the child is going to need support. So we need to be working all the time, holding both in mind. I didn't know that 20 years ago or 25. When I sought out this work, I sought it out because I was raised in an environment where my father was a human rights lawyer. He was an active around the world in war and genocide and in some of the areas of the world with the most devastation. And I would probably see too much too young, on the news, because the news was always on. And what always struck me was a question that I didn't actually understand, but I was asking a question about resilience. How does a person survive such horror? How does an individual move through that amount of pain, trauma, grief? I wasn't asking it from the way I can ask it now, what's our resiliency factor? But I was trying to understand, what is that? What is trauma? What is grief? And what allows us to move through? How do people not just collapse? And I sought out trying to understand relationships, because there was something to me very early on that was very clear, which was that we absolutely cannot heal in a vacuum. That we can do hard things kind of world never made sense to me. It's like, but not everybody can. So I don't understand.
No, not everyone can.
And so who can? How? What's the difference? And I began to study it as soon as I possibly could. Went to graduate school to learn how to essentially study resilience, though I didn't know I was studying that really at first, because where I landed was a primary resiliency factor is the parent-child attachment relationship, the capacity not to feel alone. When we feel connected, we can move through hard things. It's not we can move through hard things on their own. What affects us, trauma, is not the event itself, but is when we feel alone with the event. So
it's so interesting to me, just because you are coming on as my friend, and I happen to know that you have like this deep, deep, deep love for your father. And that even though he's the one who turned the news on, which, by the way, wasn't a great move, but we didn't know that in the 90s. Your bond with him seems to have buffered you from some of that, the pain of that exposure to the news, to the pain of the world.
Yeah.
Which you learned essentially in college.
Yeah.
Like what makes resilience?
Yeah, I think that's
it starts with the attunement and attachment.
way to put it. And I think sometimes it's not even only our parents, right? So something that I work on a lot with people is the corrective experiences that we develop through life when we didn't feel felt, when we did feel alone, when maybe our parents.
Can you define corrective experience for our listener?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like what it is. So the experience that corrects a relationship experience that may correct a relationship story that we had before it. So all of us, when we talk about attachment, what attachment really is, it's all over. There's many experts. There's 90 social media accounts. Turn them all off. Now I'm going to explain to you exactly what attachment is in 3 sentences. Essentially, what attachment does, or when we talk about attachment, it actually has nothing to do with physical presence or bond. Your parent could be home all the time. Your parent could not be home all the time. Let's get rid of the battles of stay-at-home mom. It's not the point. What it actually means is that it creates a blueprint of relationships. The attachment bond is a relational blueprint. That's what it is. That's what we're talking about. And through our original relationship, our primary relationship, that is the first bond. We don't get to make it not the first bond. The first bond is for the primary caregiver of the child. And that bond, we don't get to choose, is the bond that teaches us from that relationship a working model, a blueprint, a script of who we are in this world in relation to other people, a sense of self, and who are other people in this world in relation to us. So we are worthy of love. We are safe. Others are trustworthy. We are unlovable. Others are dismissive. Others are horrible. Others will leave us. We create a blueprint, and it runs silently, unconsciously through us in all our relationships. It becomes our script that we face other people and ourselves with until corrective experiences. So it becomes a propensity towards other relationships. It's how we will face, it's who we will choose. We develop coping mechanisms around it. So if we think we're going to be rejected, maybe we learn to check in a lot. Are we okay? Are we okay? Maybe we learn people-pleasing techniques, putting out real charcuterie boards at every play date. We learn ways to get the connection needs, and they often solidify and kind of get really strong. And what happens is sometimes along the way, we have a corrective experience. That is often a therapist for many people, a first time that they truly feel seen fully and completely in themselves, notice maybe the parts of themselves that they exiled, that they pushed away, like their needy parts, in order to be accepted or connected. They may face those for the first time, maybe their deep feeling parts. Sometimes when someone goes through a lot of tremendous pain, maybe they learn to never be sad, to always show up as fine or funny. Maybe they push those parts away. And a therapist could be the corrective experience. The first time that they're seen whole and that all parts of them are welcome. Maybe the first time that they can trust when they've learned not to trust. Sometimes it's a mentor, a teacher, a dear friend, a partner. And why I went.
Can it be a conglomeration of all of those, or does it need to be one person?
It can, but often a relationship has to be pretty strong and long lasting for it to create this corrective experience. Very often, I believe, which is why the motherhood and childhood and why the work, that one of the relationships we focus on the least that is a corrective experience is the mother-child relationship, but not just for the child, for the mother. That the mother has a built-in repair system in her brain, that her brain, shape shifts. We know that to make room for the child. I have no idea why we're not talking about why wouldn't that brain be shape shifting so she can focus on herself and the love she's receiving from her child, that she is growing as her child is growing. If all relationships impact both members, why is motherhood any different?
I think it probably happens all the time. I think there's this idea of matrescence, matrescence. Yeah, like essentially we're changing in motherhood, and Gabe is like mattresses. Are we talking about mattresses? I don't know, but it's like a mature. It's a particular maturity that happens in motherhood. Okay. Gabe, our engineer over here is like, I've experienced it. No, you haven't, sir. And I'll tell you why. Because I think it's a biological change, of course, right? Your brain actually changes, your hormones change, your life changes. But I don't think we don't focus on the blueprint of the way you experience relationships has the opportunity to change, and perhaps is changing, and we're just not even noticing it.
When we talk about matrescence, we talk about it from a hormonal and brain shift. We talk about it from an identity shift, but we don't talk about it from the aspect of the mutuality of a relationship. We don't talk about it from the angle that the child impacts and imprints the parent. It goes against how we talk about motherhood. We talk about motherhood as unidirectional. The mother influences who the child is becoming. We never talk about how the child's influencing who the mother's becoming. People get all uncomfortable by it, actually, because they associate that with the idea that the mother's putting on the child her problems, putting on the child to raise her. We don't have to mean that. We don't mean that. She is inherently impacted because relationships are so much more than what we say and do. They're how we feel. And so she is shaped and impacted by her child. Her child's an active participant in the relationship, constantly calling her to attention, to presence, to connection. It's not on the mother alone. The child is her co-partner in your relationship. We do not talk about it that way. And it is in such a disservice to the mother, because that means it's all on her, and it isn't.
No, it's in this dance between two people. I mean, I think a lot of why I gravitated towards respectful parenting, for many reasons. I really found it very poetic, but just the idea of a baby, a newborn, being his own person. I mean, I don't think we really thought of teenagers as their own people outside of their parents when we were growing up as a society. I'm not even talking about my own nuclear family, but I think that's a new idea. But part of the reason why I think originally when I first had my son over 8 years ago, I was so enthralled by the reminder, the truth that a newborn is a person quite literally outside of me.
And they are guiding you, right?
They are guiding me. That doesn't mean he has full reign over the house. It doesn't mean I did have to learn this on the job. That doesn't mean that a child-focused life is necessarily the right choice for my family. A family-focused life made more sense for us down the road. But he came here, on a spiritual level. I would say his soul chose mine, and here we are doing this life together in equal parts.
Yeah.
I see it with my parents, don't you?
In equal parts, yes. But that was such an important piece you just said. For some reason, we are always choosing. Our human mind really struggles with the both ends, and now more than ever. It's not a child-led home. Right now we have problems. Now we've led to the child has too much control, too much power. You still need to be.
I tried it. It doesn't work. I tried it for you.
No.
You don't need to try it.
It doesn't work because they still need a mature mind. They still need boundaries. They still need scaffolding. They're still children. And they're still looking to us to be the mature holding mind that helps them with more and more space to grow, that sees them, that guides them to being who we see they are. And they can see us and guide us to what they need. And sometimes, this is the part we miss all the time, to what we need. When we get angry, they are triggering us. They're the bulb of the flashlight going, look at this. There's something for you to look at. we're just not paying attention because we get stuck in the either or instead of both and. No, it's not a child-led home. It's not a mom-led home. It's a relationship of mutuality, of constant back and forth, of a dance, that we have to respect them as showing us and still hold our own as the adults and the mature minds as guiding them.
I have to prove your point with an example, and it includes psychedelics. So just excuse me. Okay.
I'm here as
We're
your
friends
friend.
here. Okay. So in COVID, or just at the tail end, who knows when it really ended. I live in Brooklyn, and that went on for a very long time. But let's say towards the end of the pandemic, for the most part, it was a hard time. We have really parented through some hard stuff. Tanya, have we not?
Yes, from the heart.
And my children were still small, and a friend of mine invited me to my first ever psychedelic. I guess it was a party. So it was like a sound bath, and we took psychedelics, and there was a guide, and there was music, and it was, when I say otherworldly, I really do mean it. Okay. But the biggest, well, there were several takeaways from that time, from that experience. But the one I want to underscore today, just to prove your point, is that the first image I had was of my children, and I couldn't even tell you which one, by the way, nursing. And later on, people were making fun of me that I kept going, oh, that's right. Oh, because I had such a hard time nursing, and I couldn't, my supply was very low, and it was really, when I tell you, so hard. I'm sure you experience this in your clinic, when there's a low supply and all you want to do is be there for your child. It was really hard for me. But the moment that I remember, that was imprinted in my mind, that the mushrooms wanted me to know, my higher mind wanted me to know, was that they were so happy with whatever I had to give. It really was such a beautiful reminder, and something that it's not like you have these images and then you're fine. You have to work through these moments, but they're unadulterated trust. When you hold a baby in your arms, especially as the mother, right? And they're comfortable and they're happy, like their whole weight is on you. To feel their trust in me was at such odds with my trust in myself. Yes. And what the medicine and my own higher self was trying to remind me was, that's how trustworthy you are, and how good the milk is, in whatever quantity, for however long. This is the experience of being yours. And I wish for people to know that experience, whether they want to go on a mushroom journey or not. But I just thought it was such a profound, and still it's something that I have to remind myself of, that I'm enough, et cetera. I do think that a lot of that respectful, peaceful parenting stuff can be hard to keep up with, and really bump up against our own self-worth. But it was a really healing experience, and a corrective experience, to have children who love whatever I have to give. Genuinely. Yeah. Because in that, by the way, in that experience, that psychedelic session, I also felt that way about my own parents. So, who are not perfect and really don't need to be, because they're just people.
That's so beautiful. And, the process of repair, I often talk about as being there's multi levels of it. And there are people, when we see repair online, through influencers, rupture repair. It's very trendy. I've been doing rupture repair work for 25 years. Now everyone's doing it. When they talk about the repair, they talk about the repair in present-centered moments, right? I yell at my kid and I take accountability and I say sorry. But really, repair is much, much deeper than that. And the crucial repair is often repair with self and also transgenerational repair with those who came before us. Often those are the repairs that make it very, very difficult to stop, if we don't do them, to stop the ruptures with our present-centered child. For example, a very easy non-mushroom related one, right? A mother in the morning.
We give you options here at the Mom Curious podcast.
All kinds.
With or without.
In a very child-led way. There's very particular scripts and ways to speak to your child. They deserve respect. It is very compassionate parenting. It's beautiful, but it's not always sitting with the real of the individual, the child, the parent, and all that they carry, the stories that they carry within them. Society,
life,
context. And so there's a moment where a child is acting super, super silly, not getting their shoes on, running around the house, maybe or maybe not. This happened this morning in my house, running around the house with their brother's underwear on their head to piss off their brother. And you have to go because you have to go to work because you have 5 patients, or you have whatever you have, not a real story, maybe, a podcast story.
maybe not.
And you get
you're here as a friend, so that's good.
And you get really frustrated with your child, right? At one point, you're like, take the underwear off your head, put your shoes on, we're leaving. Now, when we say your child is there teaching you, shining the flashlight, the repair to that moment can very easily be, sorry, mommy's tired, we need to go, we're in a rush, let's go. And that's like what we hear all the time, that's what we talk about. But when you leave, when you're in your car and you're quietly with yourself, or when you're on mushrooms, part of it is why did I get so angry? For some others, the reflection is, and the reflective capacity is super important. What was it about the silliness? Maybe they're noticing a pattern. Maybe it's always silliness in the mornings. Maybe it's always when they're worried. Maybe it was something about, in this case, a sibling rivalry. One of the kids being mean to the other kid and the way they were being mean. Sometimes it's, what does that story mean for me? What does that story bring up for me? What is that my child is actually telling me to pay attention to, that might be my own unmet need, or a younger part of me, a different part of me's unmet castaway need. Very often when I say your child's shining the light, I don't only mean on your goodness. We are all of us, probably good enough, good inside. But it's also our children are often shining lights on our unmet, our discarded, our broken parts. And they are asking us to pay attention to them, to reflect on them, to figure out what they are, because they keep getting in the way. And we are human, deserve to take care of those parts of us, for our children for sure, but for ourselves. And that's where all these script-based parentings that are super compassionate and well-meaning don't work, because they are not about the individual who's standing in front of the individual child with a story herself that she is still living.
How do you meet with patients? Do you meet like a kid and then they leave, and then what is your clinic like? What is
one?
Yeah. How do you work with, do you work with both the parent and the child in each family, or do you just work with parents and children?
It's a great question, because there's a very strong answer. No, I do not work with a parent and a child separately. That would be boundary blurring, in my opinion, because then I'd have multiple identified patients. But I work any which point of entry with a singular identified patient, meaning I will work with the mother, and we will hold in mind together her child and her parenting and whatever her past, how it's affecting her parenting. I will come in and out of talking directly of what's in the best interest of the child, what's in the best interest of her, but I will work with her exclusively. I will work with child exclusively, but exclusively is soft. In play-based therapy, parents under a certain age will still have sessions with me, but it is in service primarily of the child. So I'm getting less into the mother or father's history and their story as much as I would if they're my identified patient. And sometimes I'm doing my most preferred method when a mother comes in early and the baby's under 2. I am actually working with the mother with the child in the room, because there's so much that the child communicates non-verbally. And sometimes it's ideally under a year, but in how they turn to mom, and how mom turns to them, in the feeding moments, in the mother saying, see, I have no milk for this baby. And they are feeling like I'm frustrating them, and you see she's crying. And then I might be able to see your baby softly caressing your breast. And I might say, what do you think is happening right now? And you might say, oh, no, caressing me. It looks like she's actually saying thank you. And we might be able to work with, but why do you think she isn't? Why do you feel like you're failing her? What's that about? Where does that come from for you? And we will use baby in the here and now real moment to work with what's really happening. So that's ideal. Doesn't always happen that way, but it's ideal.
Wow. I sure wish I knew about you and also lived in Toronto 8 years ago, but I'm not sure that I would have been brave enough to go.
Yeah.
And I just want to honor all of those women who have the wherewithal to set the session with you and actually show up with their baby. That's so
It's really
vulnerable.
so
vulnerable.
And it's not accessible to everybody. I mean, it's so vulnerable, and it's also in the US and Canada becoming harder and harder to access good care, affordable care. It's a real problem. And so the many people who are desperately wanting to show up for their children, to be good enough mothers, who would come and sit in here if they could, but they can't. And I want to honor the many who are probably listening to this, because that's what they feel. They just want to know that they can do everything they can, but this is what's accessible to them. And that's why I always say yes to a podcast interview. That's why I love what you're doing, because sometimes it's just allowing people a form of access to what they may otherwise not be able to reach.
I really appreciate that you share over social media and that you do these podcasts. And I know you're writing a book, Because I'm Your Friend. I'm excited to read that book. Do you have any words of wisdom for women navigating a pretty gnarly world we're living in? Although, I read an article that you wrote once about having lived through war, and so I feel so silly being like, we're global warming, but it's hard, it has been a tough political system, and
it has been very,
not to diminish, but I know you know how to navigate this from a personal lens and from a professional lens. How would you say to the rest of us?
If you forgive me for making it super personal, you opened the sitting together in honoring your sister. And one of life's greatest heartbreaks, here we are talking about the foundational importance of a relationship, of not feeling alone, being the key to resilience. Well, then what happens when we lose that relationship? And in our very gnarly world, we're talking about a lot of that, whether it's due to climate disasters, whether it's war, whether it's personal losses. It is actually a really gnarly world, and there's a ton of grief and trauma. And one of the answers is not feeling alone, but what happens when we lose a person we love? What happens when we lose one of the people who would have made us feel whole or feel more connected? Then what? And I think that we need to help people go back to permission to feel, to being with their feelings, and not rushing to be okay. We live in a world where really hard things happen and we go to work. It is the greatest epidemic I think we have is a loneliness epidemic. And it's a loneliness and a separation from self, also from other people, but from self. And grief and pain and hardship, they beg us to turn towards them. It is only in the space of giving them space, of letting them be in us and feeling those feelings and moving through those feelings, often with another, that we can actually transform and heal. And so even if all you have in your capacity is a paper and a pen, and you begin to turn towards pain, towards loss, towards trauma. For some of us, it might be writing letters to the self that went through the LA fires when we first recorded this. The part of us that may have lost something and what that was like for us. Some of us might be writing towards people we lost. I miss you. It is sitting in and being with, not avoiding the things that are hard, and teaching that to our children. It's okay to be sad. It's okay for it to be hard. We can move through that. We can do that together. We don't have to push it somewhere and, go to hockey practice. And people are really afraid of that. We are really afraid of that. We think we can't move through it. But then it really forms in our bodies and it waits for us to pay attention to.
This morning, I was able to journal for the first time in almost 5 months since my sister died. And in the journal, I mean, I didn't make that much sense. It wasn't like I wasn't writing well, but I could write. I could write for a while, actually. And I acknowledged myself. I said, it's because you sat in your bed and cried. And this is the next part, And I do wish that there were more accessible forms of therapy and more relational forms of therapy, the way that you've devised in your amazing clinic. Really, I really wish. I really do wish. But in lieu of that, I think it's really special that you at least give us an hour to remind us that that paradigm is possible. It's possible. We can make that happen. And
you could read it.
The writing
that
helps.
Beautiful part of writing, but it's also
the writing helps a lot.
But it's sometimes having someone who bears witness to it. Sometimes, and that person, there's an exercise in that where that person is not to edit or to comment, or just to listen. Maybe thanking you for your bravery of sharing, but that's it. It's just a witness to your pain. If resilience is not feeling alone, then sometimes we can be a witness to ourselves, but sometimes that writing kind of allows us to meet the pain, but then we need a witness for it. We read it to a loved one, to a friend, to a therapist, if you have one. And so if someone is hearing this and they're struggling, that is one tool that we do have. It's not everything. I wish I could provide on everything in a 5-second script, but I can't. But one thing we have is...
And no one can.
No one can. It's meeting ourselves. It's meeting the parts of us that we are trying to push away, where we've thought that the best way to survive is, if it's too painful, put it away. And instead, no, face it. It's begging you to, you deserve to honor it, to honor yourself, to meet it. And if there's someone in your life who you can share that with, so you feel a little less alone in it, that is the beginning of healing. Healing occurs in relationship with yourself and with other people.
Thank you so much. I kind of think we should publish the first one and this one because they were so different, Tanya. Did I just trick you into do two episodes with me?
No, you tell me. You can cut a paste and be like, she's wearing something different halfway through that episode.
Exactly. Where can we find you?
You can find me at Dr. Cotler on Instagram, or drtanyacotler.com is my website. That's where you can find out whatever I'm doing, workshopping or teaching or my practice.
You do have like events that we can go to maybe virtually?
Yes, I
learn from you?
teach a whole bunch of workshops that are open to parents across the world that are not therapy. Therapy is designated by a jurisdiction and where you live, but workshops are not. So from a teachable standpoint, if I teach building a secure attachment with your child and it's a workshop, people can come from anywhere.
Awesome. That's so awesome. Thanks for coming on again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again.
I'm really so grateful. And okay, yeah, you, listener, thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. Should we have Tanya on for a third time? I won't trick her if that's the case. Let us know in the comments, and I'll see you next week.